Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in dark, walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed.
Hey guys, welcome to my first YouTube video on this channel where I'll be covering all 4 units of the ACE International History course. Today we're going to start with chapter 1.1, Why was imperialism a significant force for the late 19th century Europe? So to begin with, during the late 19th century, European countries had begun expanding their empires in the African continent. They did this because of economic and political motives. To start, economically, Europeans wanted access to raw materials like rubber, minerals, and other metals that were valuable to their industries at the time. And also, they sought new colonies where, like new markets where their products could be sold so their economies could be better. Politically, having overseas territories was a way to show national power, and the European countries competed with each other for control of these territories because they believed that having more land meant having more influence. Here you can see him dividing Africa up like a piece of cake. Here you can see what's supposed to depict political leaders taking land, and here's some minerals. Okay, the emergence of new imperialism. This era of the 19th century is called new imperialism because it's different than old imperialism, because it's more aggressive and more common, like more widespread. The European nations were not just seeking to control the trade routes or establishing like new trading areas, but rather to like take over entire like regions and like essentially like colonies. This was fueled by new technologies, like they had the help of new steamships and the telegraphs to make this possible. Okay, here you can see like Africa like divided into the European flags to show that they were taking over Africa and like the influence they had on the continent. Okay, the nature and purpose for the scramble of Africa. This refers to a period of rapid colonization of Africa by the European powers between the 1880s and the 1900s. At the beginning of this era, like there was only a small portion of Africa under European control, like as you can see in the 1880 picture. Most of it is gray, like just the colored parts like around the coastlines are mostly conquered by Europeans because they just came on boats and stuff. But now, since they were starting to get more aggressive, they took it to another level and they expanded inwards, and the Berlin Conference of 1884 made this process more formal and divided Africa among the European powers, but this was a problem because they did not consider the existing ethnic and tribal divisions on the continent. And the scramble for Africa was not just about like securing resources, but it was also because there was a rise of like nationalism and trying to gain national prestige for their country. And one really terrible example of this is King Leopold II, who wanted control over Congo, but he exploited the resources, especially their rubber, and he was using forced labor of the native people there to get what he wanted. Okay. The impact of European imperialism on Africa, it had a huge impact because on one hand, while it was beneficial, creating new infrastructure, introducing new ports, roads, and trading routes, and transporting European goods, another good thing is that they also brought education and like they essentially like modernized them. But also something bad was that the European powers treated Africans as inferior, and they imposed like laws and different like harsh labor systems to like exploit them since they thought they were lesser than them. And the artificial borders that were drawn by the Berlin Conference, like giving land to each European country, did not take into consideration the ethnic groups, which led to long-lasting conflicts. Also, the exploitation of Africa's resources, including rubber, diamonds, and other minerals, were done primarily for European benefit and not for Africans. Like they did not get to trade that, like the Europeans just took everything. Okay. Reasons for and extent of domestic support for overseas expansion in Britain, France, and Germany. By the late 19th century, many people in Britain, France, and Germany supported their country's involvement in imperialism because of rising nationalism and the belief that Europe was superior. In Britain, they were already like a large world power and they had a lot of influence already, but they gained support for their imperialism through education. Like the schools taught the children to be proud of their country and to be proud of what they're doing, and through propaganda, like the newspapers. And actually, they came up with the white man's burden, which was an idea that suggested that it was Britain's duty to civilize like the savage populations of Africa and Asia, which is shown in an image here. In France, the defeat of the Franco-Prussian War had left them like humiliated, like they didn't have much power, and they were trying to use imperialism as a way to restore their national pride. Schools promoted the French superiority, and they also did missionaries, and like they justified their actions of imperialism through religious purposes. Like here you can see like a Catholic image of like the cross, and like the countries like looking up to it and saying that it was like their duty, like basically. And in Germany, imperialism became a unifying force because the country had only recently come together in 1871, and like businesses and like the economy needed to grow, so they decided to seek overseas territories to compete with the other European powers, as imperialism was a way to strengthen like their national unity and their sense of pride for the German people. In conclusion, the late 19th and early 20th centuries saw the rise of imperialism driven by economic interest, national prestige, and belief in European superiority. The scramble for Africa was a result of these factors, and they controlled the continent's resources and territories. While imperialism did bring some modernization to Africa, the overall impact was negative because it divided the people and led to multiple deaths and like exploitation and unnecessary conflicts. And while there was a lot of support for imperialism, there was also opposition towards it, and they questioned the morality and like long-term benefits behind it. That's it. I hope you guys found this first video useful, and make sure to tune in for the next one, 1.2. Bye!